The desert wind howled through the cracked streets of Willow Creek, a forgotten speck on the map where the sun baked everything to dust by noon. It was late afternoon, the kind where shadows stretched long and unforgiving, when 8-year-old Lily Harper stood trembling on the roadside, her small hands clutching a faded backpack. Her father's old pickup had broken down miles back. But that wasn't the real problem. Samuel, her dad, lay slumped in the passenger seat, his legs useless from the accident that had stolen his strength 2 years ago. A logging mishap the mill owners called unavoidable, but everyone knew was negligence wrapped in lies. Lily's eyes, wide with a fear too big for her frame, scanned the empty highway. "My dad can't walk anymore," she whispered to the passing cars, her voice cracking like dry earth. No one stopped. The town had turned its back on the Harpers long ago, whispering about debts and bad luck, leaving a little girl to beg for a miracle. If this story's already pulling at your heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got more tales of quiet heroes coming your way. Dust clouds billowed in the distance, growing thicker as the rumble of engines shattered the silence. It wasn't the usual traffic. This was a thunderous procession, a line of 20 Harley-Davidsons cutting through the heat haze like a steel serpent. At the lead rode Ethan Caldwell, a man whose face bore the lines of too many sunsets and unspoken regrets. 45 years old, with salt and pepper hair tied back under a weathered bandana, Ethan had once been a soldier, then a drifter, until the Iron Vow, a brotherhood of riders bound by oaths forged in the fires of lost wars, gave him purpose. His leather vest, patched with the emblem of a coiled snake and the words "Promises Kept" fluttered in the wind. The convoy was en route to a rally up north, but something in the air, a prickling instinct honed from years on the edge, made Ethan slow his bike. He signaled the others to pull over, the growl of engines fading to a low purr as they formed a protective circle on the shoulder. Lily froze as the bikes encircled her, the scent of hot metal and exhaust mingling with the sharp tang of sagebrush. These weren't the clean-cut types who ignored her. These men and women were etched with stories, tattoos of eagles and anchors, scars that spoke of battles won and lost. The girl backed up a step, her backpack slipping to the ground. But Ethan's eyes, steady and kind beneath furrowed brows, held no threat. He killed his engine and swung off the saddle, boots crunching on gravel. "Hey, kid," he said, his voice gravelly from years of road dust crouching to her level. "What's got you out here alone?" The others dismounted too, a wall of denim and leather, but they kept their distance, respecting the moment. Lily's lip quivered, tears carving clean tracks through the dirt on her cheeks. "My dad's hurt bad. The truck died, and no one will help us get home. He can't walk. The doctor said it's forever, but I know he can if we just—" Her words trailed off into sobs, pointing to the distant pickup, a glint of rusted red against the horizon. Ethan followed her gaze, his jaw tightening. He knew that look, the raw edge of desperation, the kind that echoed his own past. 20 years ago, in a dusty VA hospital, he'd promised a fellow vet, Jake Harlan, that if the day came when one of them needed pulling from the fire, the brotherhood would ride. Jake was gone now, taken by the same shadows that haunted too many of them. But the vow lingered like engine oil in the veins. This girl, this broken-down scene, it stirred something dormant. Samuel Harper, one of the riders, a burly woman named Grace with a nurse's pin on her collar, murmured. Checking her phone, she'd heard the whispers in the last town. The mill accident, the denied claims, the family left to rot while suits in the city pocketed the profits. Corruption, plain and simple, the kind that ground good people to dust. The convoy's mechanic, Noah, a lanky vet with grease-stained fingers, was already striding toward the pickup, toolbox in hand. "Let's see what we're dealing with," he called back, his tone matter-of-fact, but his eyes burned with the quiet fire of men who'd seen enough injustice. Ethan knelt closer to Lily, wiping a tear from her face with a calloused thumb. "We're gonna fix this, sweetheart. You and your dad, you're not alone anymore." The words hung heavy, a promise not just to her, but to the ghosts of oaths past. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in bloody oranges, the bikers sprang into action. Noah tinkered under the hood. The clank of tools a rhythmic counterpoint to Lily's fading sniffles. Grace radioed ahead to a buddy at the local clinic, her voice sharp over the crackle. "We need a ramp, wheelchair access. Stat, tell 'em the iron vow's coming." Word spread like wildfire through Willow Creek as the convoy towed the Harper truck back into town, engines roaring a defiant symphony. Townsfolk peered from porches, murmuring about these outsiders with their rumbling beasts and unyielding stares. At the heart of it, Samuel stirred in his seat, his weathered face paling at the sight of strangers. "Lily, what have you done?" he rasped, but she beamed up at him, clutching Ethan's hand. "They're helping, Dad, like knights, but with bikes." Ethan met Samuel's gaze through the window, a nod passing between them, man to man, survivor to survivor. The mill's foreman, a slick type named Victor Lang, watched from his office, his face twisting in unease. These riders weren't locals. They didn't bow to small-town politics or buried truths. By dusk, the group had transformed the Harpers' sagging porch into a makeshift haven. Noah and the crew hauled in supplies from their saddlebags, blankets, medical kits, even a portable generator humming to life against the encroaching night. Grace checked Samuel's vitals, her touch gentle but firm. "You've been carrying this alone too long," she said softly. "But promises like ours, they don't break." Ethan stood watch, the cool evening air carrying the faint aroma of pine from the distant woods. He'd ride out tomorrow, but not before ensuring the Harpers had a fighting chance. Lily sat beside her father, her small hand in his, whispering dreams of walks they'd take again. In the glow of lantern light, the bikers shared stories around a crackling fire, tales of brothers saved, vows honored, binding this new family in threads of steel and loyalty. As stars pierced the velvet sky, Ethan felt the weight lift, just a fraction. The road called, but for tonight, Willow Creek had become a battlefield of the heart, where justice wasn't forged in courts, but in the grit of those who refused to look away. The girl who'd begged on the highway now slept soundly, her father's breathing steady for the first time in months. And in the distance, the engines idled, ready for whatever dawn demanded next. The first light of dawn crept over Willow Creek like a hesitant promise, casting long shadows across the Harpers' weathered porch where the bikers had claimed vigil through the night. Ethan Caldwell stood at the edge, nursing a tin mug of black coffee that steamed in the chill air, its bitter scent cutting through the fading aroma of last night's fire. The town stirred slowly, roosters crowing faintly, the distant hum of a tractor. But here the air hummed with purpose. Samuel Harper shifted in his makeshift bed, a cot dragged from the truck and padded with saddle blankets, his eyes flickering open to the unfamiliar faces moving with quiet efficiency. Lily, curled beside him, murmured in her sleep, her small chest rising and falling in rhythm with the idling engines parked like sentinels along the dirt driveway. Ethan's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the mill loomed like a skeletal giant, its smokestack silent against the paling sky. He'd heard enough from Grace's hushed recounting the night before. The accident that pinned Samuel under a felled log, the company's quick dismissal with a paltry settlement that barely covered hospital bills. "They called it an act of God," Grace had said, her voice laced with the steel of someone who'd patched up too many forgotten souls in ERs across state lines. But it was greed, plain as the scars on his legs. Ethan clenched his jaw, the old vow echoing in his chest, the iron vow sworn under desert stars with brothers who'd traded uniforms for leathers, one for all, promises unbroken. This wasn't their fight, not really, but walking away, that would shatter something deeper than bone. Noah emerged from the shadows of the garage, wiping sweat from his brow despite the morning cool, his hands black with grease from scavenging parts overnight. "Engine's patched, but it's a band-aid," he reported to Ethan, voice low so as not to wake the girl. "We need more than a tow to get 'em mobile. Samuel's rig ain't just broke, it's a relic." The others gathered, a loose circle of riders. Burly Marcus, with his firefighter's tattoo peeking from his sleeve, young Tyler nursing a bandaged knuckles from some long-ago brawl, and Sarah, a sharp-eyed mechanic whose laugh could cut through engine roar. They nodded, unspoken agreement passing like a shared glance in formation. Ethan set his mug down with a soft clink. "Then we build. Not just fix, make it right. Ramps, lifts, whatever it takes so he can roll out of here on his terms." By mid-morning, the porch transformed into a command center, tools scattered like battle gear across the splintered wood. The rumble of additional bikes announced reinforcements. Word had rippled through the Brotherhood's network overnight, drawing a dozen more from nearby chapters. Engines growled to a halt, disgorging riders laden with lumber, welding torches, and crates of hardware pilfered from sympathetic garages up the line. The air filled with the sharp tang of sawdust and molten metal, punctuated by the whir of drills and the low murmur of plans sketched on a scrap of cardboard. Lily watched wide-eyed from the doorway, clutching a juice box one of the women had pressed into her hands, her fear from yesterday melting into awe. "Are you making a castle, mister?" she asked Ethan, who knelt nearby, measuring a ramp's angle with a level that trembled slightly in his grip. He chuckled, a rare sound like gravel under tires. "Something better, kid, a way for your dad to stand tall again, even if it's on wheels." Samuel, propped up now with pillows, observed from his cot, his face a map of doubt and gratitude. "You folks don't owe us this," he rasped, voice thick from disuse. "Town's got its ways. Mill owns half the sheriff's office. They'll come sniffing." Ethan's eyes met his, steady as the horizon. "Let 'em. We've faced worse than small-town snakes." Flashbacks tugged at Ethan then, unbidden. The IED that stole his stride in a far-off sandstorm. The hospital bed where Jake Harlan gripped his hand and extracted that eternal oath. "If it's family, we ride. No questions." Samuel's accident mirrored it too closely. The betrayal of those sworn to protect, the slow grind of bureaucracy that buried men alive. As the sun climbed, hammering the work into feverish progress, whispers spread through Willow Creek like dust devils. Folks gathered at the general store, peering toward the Harper place, where the growl of saws and the clang of hammers built a crescendo. Victor Lang, the foreman, paced his office at the mill, phone pressed to his ear, his voice a hiss into the receiver. "These biker trash think they can waltz in, get the law down there, harassment, whatever sticks." But the sheriff, a portly man named Harlan with debts to the company, hesitated, memories of his own war days surfacing like old wounds. He'd seen the Iron Vows patches before. They weren't the chaos the suits painted. Still, he rolled out, cruiser crunching gravel toward the fray. Tension coiled as the lawman arrived, his lights flashing silently against the porch's chaos. The bikers paused, tools lowering like weapons at ease, forming a loose line that spoke of discipline forged in fire. Ethan stepped forward, wiping sawdust from his hands, his posture unyielding but open. "Afternoon, officer. We're just lending a hand." Harlan eyed the setup, a sturdy ramp emerging from rough lumber, angled perfectly to the truck's door, reinforced with metal brackets that gleamed under the sun. Beyond it, Noah and Tyler welded a custom lift to the vehicle's frame, sparks flying like defiant stars. The girl darted out, unafraid now, tugging at her father's blanket. "See, Dad? They're making you fly." The sheriff's bluster faltered, his gaze lingering on Samuel's grateful nod. "Heard complaints," Harlan muttered, but his tone lacked bite. Grace approached, her nurses calm, a shield. "This man's been failed by the system you uphold. We're fixing that morally, if not legally." A beat of silence stretched, the air thick with the scent of pine resin and resolve. Harlan tipped his hat almost imperceptibly and retreated to his cruiser. "Carry on," he said, engine coughing to life. The bikers resumed, the moment a quiet victory. Justice blooming not in confrontation, but in the simple act of building what was broken. By afternoon's end, the ramp stood complete, a rampart of wood and will, tested with a wheelchair borrowed from Grace's contacts. Samuel wheeled himself forward tentatively, the mechanism humming smoothly, his first unassisted movement in years, drawing cheers that echoed like thunder. Lily clapped, tears of joy streaking her face, while Ethan watched from the sidelines, the weight of old promises lightening with each turn of the wheels. But as the sun arced westward, casting golden hues over the mill's shadow, Victor Lang's sedan pulled up at the property line, his eyes narrowing at the spectacle. The town buzzed now, word of the biker miracle spreading, challenging the corruption that had festered unchecked. What they'd built wasn't just wood and metal, it was a beacon, drawing lines in the sand that no one could ignore. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The afternoon sun beat down on Willow Creek like a relentless judge, turning the air thick and shimmering over the Harper's driveway, where the newly forged ramp gleamed like a badge of defiance. Victor Lang stepped from his sleek black sedan, his polished shoes scuffing the gravel as if offended by the grit. He was a man built from boardroom angles, sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind that calculated profits over people. The mill's shadow stretched toward the property, but today it felt shorter, challenged by the circle of bikers who paused in their work, hammers and welders set aside with deliberate calm. Ethan Caldwell straightened from where he'd been bolting a final support to the truck's lift, his leather vest dusted with sawdust, the coiled snake emblem catching the light. The scent of fresh-cut pine mingled with the acrid bite of cooling metal, a reminder that creation could be as fierce as destruction. Lang's gaze swept the scene, the ramp rising smoothly to the porch, the customized hydraulic lift humming faintly as Noah tested its gears, and Samuel Harper wheeling himself forward with a tentative strength that bordered on wonder. Lily perched on the steps, her small fingers tracing the wood grain, oblivious to the storm brewing. "What's all this?" Lang demanded, his voice slicing through the murmurs like a poorly tuned engine. "You outsiders think you can just invade private property. This is company business. The Harpers owe us." He jabbed a finger toward Samuel, who met it with a steady stare, his hands gripping the wheelchair arms, not in fear, but resolve. The bikers formed a subtle arc, not aggressive, but unmovable, their presence a wall of shared history etched in faded tattoos and knowing glances. Ethan stepped forward, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, the motion pulling up the hem of his shirt to reveal a scar snaking across his ribs, a souvenir from that desert blast that had nearly claimed him. "No invasion, Mr. Lang, just neighbors fixing what's broken. Your mill broke it first." The words landed soft but heavy, echoing the vows that bound the iron vow. Lang's face reddened, a flush creeping up his collar. He'd buried the accident report deep, greased palms to keep the sheriff quiet. But these riders, they didn't play by town rules. Grace moved beside Ethan, her nurse's pin glinting like a talisman. Medically, Samuel's condition worsened without support. This setup, it's basic humanity, not charity. Her tone was clinical, but her eyes held the fire of late-night shifts, saving lives the system discarded. The foreman sneered, circling the ramp like a predator sizing up prey. "Humanity! This is trespassing. I'll have you all run out by sundown." But his bluster faltered as more bikes rumbled in from the road, reinforcements trickling from the Brotherhood's web, engines purring to a halt in a symphony of loyalty. Tyler, the young rider with the bandaged knuckles, handed out water bottles from a cooler, his easy grin masking the edge honed from street fights, turned righteous. "Run us out? You'd need more than words for that." Whispers rippled through the growing crowd of townsfolk drawn by the commotion, the baker's wife clutching her apron, old Mr. Ellis from the feed store nodding approval. Willow Creek had watched the Harpers fade into hardship, but this was a spark, igniting murmurs of long-buried grievances against the mill's iron grip. Samuel cleared his throat, wheeling closer, the ramp's smooth incline carrying him with unexpected grace. "Victor, you know the truth. That log didn't fall on its own. Your crew cut corners, and I paid for it." His voice, rough from disuse, carried the weight of 2 years' silence, a confession that hung in the air like exhaust fumes. Lang's eyes darted, calculating escape routes, but Ethan held his ground, the memory of Jake Harlan flooding back. That hospital promise, whispered over beeping monitors, to stand for the fallen. "We've all got scars, Lang, some from machines, some from men who forget their word. This..." He gestured to the setup, where Sarah now fine-tuned the lift's controls, her deft hands coaxing a soft whir from the mechanism. "This is us remembering." Tension thickened as Lang pulled out his phone, dialing with feigned authority, but the line crackled with static. Grace's subtle interference, her tech-savvy side jamming the signal with a pocket device borrowed from a rider ally. "Call off your dogs!" Lang spat, but the bikers didn't flinch. Instead, Marcus, the firefighter with the eagle tattoo, lit a small grill scavenged from the truck bed, the sizzle of burgers cutting the standoff with domestic normalcy. "Join us or not," he called, flipping patties that filled the air with savory smoke. "But we're eating, Harper's too." Lily giggled, the sound a balm, darting to help set paper plates, her backpack forgotten in the corner, like yesterday's fears. Lang hesitated, the crowd's eyes on him now, a jury of dust-covered faces. He wasn't used to this, raw integrity staring him down without fists or threats. Backing away to his car, he muttered promises of repercussions, but his tires spun gravel in retreat, leaving only echoes. The bikers exhaled collectively, resuming work with renewed vigor. By late afternoon, the project expanded, a covered awning over the ramp, woven from tarps and poles, shielding against Willow Creek's sudden rains. Noah sketched plans for a full accessible garage on a napkin, his pencil strokes as precise as his engine repairs. "We can make this place a fortress," he said to Ethan, who nodded, watching Samuel guide Lily in a slow circuit on the wheels, her laughter pealing like bells. As shadows lengthened, Ethan pulled Samuel aside, the two men sharing a quiet bench under the awning. The air cooled, carrying hints of wildflowers from the roadside. "I lost my legs full use overseas," Ethan admitted, voice low, the confession a bridge between strangers. "Promised a brother I'd never let another vet or family fall through cracks like that." Samuel's eyes misted, gripping Ethan's forearm. "You rode in like answers to prayers we stopped saying." The bond sealed there, unspoken, a new thread in the iron vows tapestry. Grace monitored from afar, her stethoscope around her neck, while Tyler taught Lily simple bike maintenance, her tiny hands smudged with oil, eyes alight with possibility. Dusk painted the sky in purples and golds, the mill's lights flickering on like wary eyes. The town square buzzed with tales of the biker build, folks slipping notes under the Harper door, offers of work, apologies long overdue. But Victor Lang wasn't done. From his office window, he watched the glow of the grill fire. plotting deeper shadows. Ethan felt it, the road's pull warring with this newfound stand. The engines idled nearby, a low promise of mobility, but what they'd built here was immobile in its impact, a foundation cracking the corruption's facade. Lily hugged her father's wheels, whispering of adventures ahead, while the stars emerged, witnesses to loyalty's quiet revolution. Tomorrow would test it further, but for now, Willow Creek breathed easier, the weight of one family's burden lifted by hands that refused to let go. The night air in Willow Creek hung heavy with the scent of cooling earth and lingering grill smoke, a fragile peace settling over the Harpers' transformed porch like a blanket woven from unexpected threads. Lanterns cast flickering pools of gold across the ramp, its sturdy lines now a testament to hands that built without asking permission. Ethan Caldwell leaned against the truck's fender, the metal still warm from the day's labors, his calloused fingers tracing the edge of a fresh weld. The Iron Vow riders sprawled in easy vigil, some nursing beers from a cooler, others sharing low murmurs of roots and rallies past, while Lily's laughter bubbled from inside, where she and Sarah polished tools under the awning's shelter. Samuel wheeled himself to the doorway, the soft hum of the lift a new rhythm in his world, his face softened by the firelight, though shadows of doubt lingered in his eyes. Ethan caught the shift in Samuel's posture, a subtle tension like a coil ready to spring. "Can't sleep?" he asked, pushing off the fender to join him, the gravel crunching under his boots. Samuel shook his head, gripping the wheelchair's arms, the wood grain rough against his palms. "Grateful, don't get me wrong, but Lang, he doesn't let go easy. Mill's got hooks in everything here. Jobs, loans, even the church fund." His voice carried the weariness of a man who'd fought invisible chains for too long, the accident's echo still fresh in the way his gaze drifted to his useless legs. Ethan nodded, pulling up a crate to sit, the night breeze whispering through the pines like old secrets. "We've tangled with types like him before, suits who think paper trails bury the truth. But vows like ours, they cut deeper." Inside, Grace tended to a minor cut on Tyler's hand from the welding, her movements precise, the faint antiseptic tang cutting the cozy haze. "Hold still," she murmured, her nurse's instincts blending with the rider's edge. Tyler winced but grinned, his young face marked by the faint scar of a bar fight turned guardian stand. Worth it, seeing the old man roll like that. Lily hovered nearby, her backpack now stuffed with shiny bolts like treasures, her eyes bright with the day's magic. But as the clock ticked past midnight, a low rumble pierced the quiet. Not bikes, but the growl of an unmarked van creeping down the lane, headlights dimmed like a thief in the dark. The riders stiffened, hands drifting to pockets where keys and tools doubled as defenses, the air thickening with unspoken readiness. The van halted at the property line, doors sliding open to disgorge three figures in dark jackets, mill security, hired muscle with the sheriff's blind eye. Victor Lang emerged last, his silhouette sharp against the moonlight, a clipboard clutched like a shield. "Evening, gentlemen," he called, his tone oily smooth, stepping forward with feigned casualness. "Just a welfare check. Can't have vagrants turning this into a camp." The bikers rose as one, a fluid motion honed from rides through hostile territories, forming a line that blocked the path without a word. Ethan stood at the center, his broad frame casting a long shadow, the coiled snake patch on his vest glinting like a warning. "Welfare. Looks more like harassment to me. Samuel's home, Lang. We're guests." Lang's eyes narrowed, flicking to the ramp, the lift, the subtle reinforcements now visible in the lantern glow. A reinforced gate sketched on Noah's napkin, half built by moonlight. "This setup's a hazard. Unpermitted construction on disputed land. The Harpers defaulted on that loan." He thrust the clipboard forward, papers rustling like dry leaves, but Marcus intercepted it, scanning the fine print with a firefighter's eye for hidden flames. "Disputed? Smells like forgery. Dates don't line up with the accident report. The security men shifted, hands flexing, but Grace's voice cut through, calm and cutting. Legally, maybe, but morally. You're the one who left a man pinned under his own negligence. We saw the scars, vestiges of a fight he didn't start. Tension crackled like static before a storm, the night alive with the chirp of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. Lily peeked from the door, her small face paling, but Samuel wheeled forward, the ramp carrying him with defiant ease. Enough, Victor. You pushed that log chain too thin to save costs. I remember the shift boss yelling about quotas. His words landed like gravel in a quiet engine, stirring the townsfolk who'd gathered at the fence line, whispers turning to nods. One of them, old Mrs. Riley from the diner, clutched her shawl. He's right. We all heard the rumors. Lang faltered, his clipboard trembling slightly, the facade cracking under the weight of collective memory. Ethan felt the pull of old ghosts then. The desert heat, Jake Harlan's grip in that sterile room, the promise extracted amid beeps and pain. Watch for the ones who can't ride anymore, brother. Pull 'em up. This was it, the vow manifesting in wood and steel against a corruption that preyed on the vulnerable. Walk away, Lang, he said, voice low and steady, like the rumble of a bike at idle. Or we'll ride this truth straight to every chapter house from here to the border. Your mill's secrets, they'll echo louder than our engines. The security men exchanged glances, one muttering into a radio, but the signal fizzled. Tyler's quick work with a jammer from his pack. Lang's face twisted, a mix of rage and realization as the crowd swelled. Flashlights bobbing like fireflies drawn to the light. In the standoff's heartbeat, Noah stepped from the shadows, holding a salvaged log segment from the truck bed, its bark scarred like Samuel's memory. This what pinned him. We found it in the scrap. Matches the mill's markings. Gasps rippled through the onlookers, the evidence a silent accusation. Lang backed toward the van, his polished shoes slipping on loose dirt. This isn't over, he hissed, but his voice lacked conviction, doors slamming as they retreated into the night, tail lights fading like defeated stars. The bikers exhaled, the tension uncoiling into quiet cheers, hands clapping shoulders in solidarity. Samuel reached out, clasping Ethan's arm, a bond forged in the fire of that moment. You gave me wheels again, and maybe justice. As the crowd dispersed, murmuring of town meetings and petitions, the riders gathered around the fire's embers, sharing stories of similar stands. Vets pulled from VA red tape, families shielded from foreclosures. Lily emerged, climbing into her father's lap, the wheelchair a throne now, her whisper carrying on the breeze. They're our family too, Dad. Ethan watched, the road's call distant for once, replaced by the warmth of promises kept. But dawn would bring scrutiny. Lang's retreat was tactical, not surrender. Willow Creek stirred with change, the mill's grip loosening thread by thread as the first birdsong pierced the sky. What they'd built wasn't just for the Harpers. It was a foundation for reckonings yet to come, loyalty's quiet roar echoing into the light. If this chapter's got you fired up, smash that like button. It helps these stories reach more hearts in need of hope. The first rays of morning sun sliced through the pines surrounding Willow Creek, gilding the Harper's Ramp in a warm, defiant glow that chased away the night's chill. Ethan Caldwell stood at the edge of the porch, his boots planted firm on the fresh wood, the faint creak underfoot, a reminder of the hours poured into its making. The air carried the crisp bite of dew-kissed grass, mixed with the lingering oil from the truck's lift, now humming softly as Samuel tested it once more, wheeling down the incline with a steadiness that bordered on miracle. Lily darted beside him, her laughter a bright counterpoint to the low rumble of idling bikes lining the driveway like loyal hounds. The town stirred beyond the fence, neighbors emerging with coffee mugs in hand, their whispers forming a gentle buzz, eyes drawn to the beacon of change that had bloomed overnight. Ethan's gaze hardened as a dust plume rose on the horizon, heralding an approach that set his instincts aflame. It wasn't the sheriff this time, nor Lang's van. This was a convoy of its own, 3 sleek SUVs, black as shadowed intent, flanked by a county cruiser with lights flashing silently. Victor Lang stepped from the lead vehicle, his suit rumpled from a sleepless night, flanked by a stern-faced attorney in wire-rimmed glasses and 2 deputies whose hands hovered near holsters. The scent of exhaust mingled with the morning mist as they fanned out, the attorney's briefcase clicking open like a judge's gavel. "Mr. Caldwell," Lang called, his voice amplified by false confidence, "this ends now. Unlawful assembly, property interference. These charges will stick." The bikers rose from their spots around the cooling grill, a seamless shift from rest to readiness, Noah wiping his hands on a rag while Grace pocketed her stethoscope, her expression a mask of unyielding calm. Samuel halted at the ramp's base, Lily clinging to his side, her small fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. The wheelchair's wheels ground softly against the gravel, a sound that anchored the moment amid the rising tension. Ethan stepped forward, his leather vest creaking, the coiled snake emblem a silent oath against the encroaching suits. "Charges for helping a man stand on his own?" His tone was even, gravelly from the road's toll, but laced with the steel of battles long past. The attorney thrust forward a sheaf of papers, the wind rustling them like accusations. "The mill holds liens on this land. Your deed modifications violate zoning. Evacuate or face arrest." Deputies advanced, boots thudding in unison, but Marcus intercepted with a firefighter's broad stance, his eagle tattoo flexing as he crossed his arms. "Zoning. We've seen permits forged from thinner lies than this." The standoff stretched, the sun climbing higher to bake the scene in unrelenting light, sweat beading on brows as the air thickened with unspoken histories. Ethan felt the pull of Jake Harlan's ghost then, the hospital promise replaying in fragments. "Ride for the ones pinned down, brother. Don't let the suits bury 'em." This was no desert ambush, but the betrayal echoed, the mill's greed mirroring the brass that sent good men into fire without backup. Grace moved to Samuel's side, her hand light on his shoulder, checking his pulse with a subtle touch. "Stress like this could undo progress," she murmured, loud enough for the deputies to hear, her nurse's authority a shield. Tyler, ever the spark, edged closer to Lily, distracting her with a shiny wrench from his pocket, its metallic gleam catching her eye. "Watch this. It's like magic," he whispered, spinning it to divert her fear. Townsfolk gathered at the periphery, their numbers swelling like a tide turning. Mrs. Riley with a basket of fresh bread, Mr. Ellis clutching a faded ledger of his own mill grievances. "We've let this go on too long," Ellis called, his voice cracking the deputy's resolve. Lang's face paled, the clipboard from last night now replaced by legal bluster, but cracks showed in his facade, eyes darting as the crowd murmured assent. "The log that fell on me," Samuel interjected, wheeling forward with deliberate slowness, the ramp's incline carrying him like an extension of will. "It was marked with your crew's stamp." Noah pulled it from the scrap, evidence of cut-rate chains. He nodded to the mechanic, who held up the scarred segment, bark flaking in the light, a tangible echo of the accident's vestiges. The attorney's glasses slipped, his composure fracturing as flashes popped from a neighbor's phone, capturing the moment for social threads that would ripple beyond Willow Creek. Lang lunged for the log, but Sarah blocked him with the mechanic's poise, her grease-streaked arms a barrier. "Touch it, and you're tampering," she said, voice steady as an engine at peak. The deputies hesitated, one exchanging a glance with the other, memories of their own overlooked claims surfacing like old wounds. Ethan seized the pause, his voice rising clear over the gravel. "This isn't about land or liens. It's about a promise, to stand for what's right when the system's blind. Iron vow doesn't back down from that. The words hung, a vow renewed, binding the riders in their loose circle, engines purring faintly as if echoing the heartbeat of loyalty. Lang's retreat began subtly, a step back then another, his attorney whispering urgently, "We'll review this in court." He bluffed. But the SUVs reversed with tires spinning dust, the cruiser trailing like a defeated shadow. Cheers erupted from the crowd, hands clapping in a wave that washed over the porch. Bread baskets passed among the bikers in impromptu thanks. Samuel exhaled, pulling Lily close, her head resting against his chest as the wheelchair hummed to a stop. "You turned the tide," he said to Ethan. Eyes meeting in shared understanding, the weight of isolation lifting like morning fog. Grace smiled faintly, bandaging a splinter from the ramp's edge on Tyler's finger, the antiseptic's sharp scent, a note of normalcy amid triumph. As the sun crested noon, the work resumed with fresh momentum, extending the awning into a shaded patio, Noah sketching solar panels for off-grid power, his pencil flying across the napkin like a battle plan. The town integrated now, volunteers hauling supplies, stories exchanged over sandwiches that filled the air with mustard and fresh-cut tomato. Ethan watched from the truck's hood, where he'd perched to catch his breath, the scar on his ribs itching under the heat, a reminder that redemption came scarred but whole. Lily approached, offering him a cookie from Mrs. Riley's basket, crumbs dusting her chin. "Will you stay forever?" she asked, eyes wide with child's hope. He ruffled her hair gently, the gesture paternal in its warmth. "As long as the road allows, kid, but you've got family now, chosen kind." Yet beneath the camaraderie, Ethan sensed the undercurrent. Lang's threats weren't empty. Court dates loomed like storm clouds on the horizon. Whispers from the crowd hinted at deeper mill secrets. Falsified safety logs, payoffs to silence voices. The Iron Vows network buzzed on radios tucked in saddlebags, chapters mobilizing for testimony, riders en route with records from similar fights. Samuel wheeled to Ethan's side, the lift whirring softly. "Whatever comes, we face it together." The bond solidified there, a quiet pact, amid the clatter of hammers and laughter, the desert wind carrying hints of rain. Cleansing inevitable. Willow Creek transformed, the mill's silhouette shrinking against the collective stand, but the true test brewed. Justice's slow burn demanding one final ride into the fray. The noon sun hung high over Willow Creek, turning the Harpers' driveway into a stage of sweat and solidarity, where hammers rang like victory bells against the rhythm of shifting winds. Ethan Caldwell wiped the dust from his brow, the gritty film clinging to his skin like the remnants of old battles, as he surveyed the expanding sanctuary they'd forged from scraps and sheer will. The awning now stretched like protective wings over the ramp, solar panels glinting on Noah's blueprint napkin, promising power independent of the mill's greedy grid. Neighbors milled about, their contributions weaving into the fabric, fresh lumber from Ellis's shed, paint cans stirred by Mrs. Riley's steady hands, transforming isolation into a communal pulse. Lily chased Tyler through the legs of the growing patio, her giggles slicing the air, while Samuel wheeled circuits with increasing confidence, the lift's hum a symphony of reclaimed freedom. But the horizon darkened not with clouds, but with the whine of tires on asphalt, a black sedan slicing through the dust like a venomous arrow. Victor Lang emerged alone this time, his face gaunt under the relentless light, no entourage to shield his fraying armor. He clutched a thick envelope, its edges crisp against the chaos of construction, and strode forward with the hollow gait of a man cornered by his own shadows. The bikers paused, tools lowering in unison, a circle forming instinctively around the Harpers, Grace at Samuel's side, her stethoscope a quiet sentinel. Noah's grease-blackened hands flexing as if ready to wrench truth from lies. Ethan met Lang at the ramp's base, the wood still warm underfoot, its scent of pine resin a stark contrast to the foreman's cologne-soaked desperation. "Enough games," Lang rasped, thrusting the envelope forward, his voice cracking like dry timber. "The board's folding. Settlement. Full coverage for the accident. Medical. Back pay. No liens, no strings." The words tumbled out, laced with defeat, but Ethan's eyes narrowed, scanning the man's tremor, the way his gaze avoided Samuel's steady stare. Flashbacks flickered unbidden. Jake Harlan's pale face in that VA ward, the promise sealed with a blood-oath grip. "Fight the ones who chain us down, brother. Break 'em with the light." This wasn't surrender. It was a ploy, a half measure to bury deeper sins. "Full truth or nothing," Ethan said, his gravelly tone cutting clean, the coiled snake on his vest seeming to writhe in the sun. "We know about the logs, the payoffs, the whole rotten chain." Lang's facade splintered, sweat tracing lines down his temples as the crowd hushed, breaths held like a collective inhale. Samuel wheeled closer, the ramp carrying him with the grace of a man reborn, Lily peeking from behind Grace's skirt, her small hand clutching a half-eaten cookie. "You called it unavoidable," Samuel said, voice steady as the earth beneath them. "But it was murder by neglect. My legs, my life, stolen for quotas." The air thickened with the weight of unveiled scars, vestiges of a struggle that had festered in silence for years. Townsfolk leaned in, Mr. Ellis nodding fiercely, his ledger now a shared testament passed hand to hand, pages filled with dates and discrepancies that mirrored the mill's deceit. Grace stepped forward, her nurse's poise unyielding, the faint antiseptic tang from her kit lingering like moral clarity. Medically, it's clear, complications from untreated trauma, denied claims that let infection set in. This settlement, it's a bandage on a wound you inflicted. Lang's envelope trembled, papers rustling like confessions in the breeze, but he pressed on, desperation etching deeper lines. "Take it. The board's scared, your viral posts, the chapters riding in, but push further and it all crumbles. Jobs lost, town suffers." Tyler snorted from the sidelines, his bandaged knuckles whitening as he gripped a wrench, the metal cool against his palm. "Suffers, like the Harpers did. We've got riders with lawyers, vets with stories that bury suits like you." The standoff pulsed with ethical fire, the sun's heat mirroring the burn of dilemmas long ignored. Ethan felt the brotherhood's vow coil tighter in his chest, a living promise that had pulled him from drifter's haze to this dusty crossroads. Lang's eyes darted to the mill's distant silhouette, now dwarfed by the gathering. Flashlights from last night's vigil evolving into a dawn of accountability. "Fine," Lang muttered, slumping as if the weight of exposed greed crushed him. "Full disclosure, reports, witnesses. The board steps down. Just stop the ride." He dropped the envelope at Ethan's feet, papers scattering like fallen leaves, revealing notarized admissions that sealed the mill's fate. Falsified inspections, bribed officials, a ledger of lives compromised for profit. Cheers erupted, a wave crashing over the porch, hands clasping in raw relief as the crowd surged forward, enveloping Lang in a tide he couldn't stem. He retreated to his sedan, engine coughing to life in hasty flight, leaving only echoes of capitulation. Samuel exhaled, tears carving paths through the dust on his cheeks, pulling Lily into an embrace that the wheelchair cradled like a fortress. "It's over," he whispered, the words a balm. His hands tracing her hair as the lift whirred softly, symbol of motion restored. Ethan knelt to gather the papers, the ink smudged but binding, a justice poetic in its quiet unraveling, not through fists, but through the unyielding honor of those who refused to ride away. As afternoon waned, the work evolved into celebration, the patio roofed with shared tarps, solar wires snaking like veins of independence, the air alive with the sizzle of a communal grill reignited by Marcus's steady hand. Stories flowed like the cooling breeze, veterans' oaths, nurses' midnight vigils, mechanics' fixes for broken worlds, binding the iron vow to Willow Creek's soil. Ethan watched from the ramp's edge, the wood's grain worn smooth by the day's traffic, his scar itching less now, a healed echo of losses redeemed. Lily tugged his sleeve, eyes sparkling like the first stars. "You kept your promise," she said, hugging his leg fiercely. He ruffled her hair, the gesture sealing a family chosen in the forge of crisis. Dusk draped the town in velvet hues, the mill's lights dimming as new leadership whispers spread, honest hands taking the reins, restitution rippling outward. Samuel wheeled to Ethan's side under the awning, the two men sharing a nod heavy with brotherhood. "You gave us more than wheels," Samuel said, voice thick, "a legacy of standing tall." The engines idled one last time, a low farewell rumble as riders mounted up, saddlebags heavier with town-baked pies and heartfelt notes. Ethan swung onto his Harley, the leather seat familiar as an old friend's grip, the road ahead calling with the promise of new stands. Willow Creek faded in the mirrors, transformed, not by thunder, but by the silent courage of promises kept, a beacon for the forgotten, where loyalty outshone corruption's shadow. In the quiet aftermath, as stars wheeled overhead, the Harper's porch glowed with lantern light. A haven built on honor's unbreaking spine. Justice had rolled in on wheels of steel and will, leaving a town forever changed, hearts mended by the ride that refused to end. Thank you for riding along on this journey of unbreakable promises and chosen family. If this story moved you, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. We've got more tales of quiet heroes waiting to inspire.